Now what we're seeing is as people have more free time, they have more access to resources, and they have kind of infinite knowledge at their fingertips, which means they can tap into, any form of creation almost. And I think to some extent that trumps the Renaissance orders of magnitude.
We don't know what happens when we get more and more layers of infrastructure right. I think if we look back and see the boom that happened since the web and since the technical stacks that became standardized and enabled layers of innovation to happen on top of them, we couldn't even predict 10 years ago the kinds of things that we're seeing nowadays.
I think I'm mostly interested in the ways, especially recently, the ways that people can work together through the internet to create things that would otherwise be impossible. Yeah, I think now that we have kind of more computer resources than we've ever had, both on the processing side and also on the storage and organization and communication side, what we're seeing is richer and more full content that's more contextually, it's more human.
With the democratization that's come with a lot of the social networking tools and with the web being so democratically available, I think more people are kind of trying to take on the role of curator, even if it's in very, very small parts of their life. We will always and still have those, quote, experts, but I think that we will start to see more sort of democratic roles of curation.
There was this discussion at the beginning when I was blogging, and they say, oh, bloggers are curators, you think you're a curator. No, I'm not. Sometimes I work as a curator, but it's something different from my blog. The term has been expanded to say select or highlight. I work a lot with intuition.
That is the role that we play, making connections between things that might not otherwise be obvious connections.
Well, I think the switch was like a long time ago when basically the amount of information available and the amount of books available suddenly became more than the abilities of a human beings to read for all his life, and to even to understand. And nowadays we're just surrounded by so many information. So how do we deal with this? Basically we deal on an everyday basis, one by one, by sort of digging our own history through that. And it's really, it's very interesting subjective process that I'm trying to apply myself on an everyday basis, sort of grabbing information here or there and putting them in contact and see what happens. Each time that I make films now, I'm like, oh yeah, let's do this film by getting inspired by the images of that guy and the ideas of that dude. And okay, I'm gonna make a film today like this and see what happens. It's really exciting. We're just constantly remixing history, telling our own history through that. It's very, very exciting.
The idea of originality and proprietariness also contributes to the whole great man theory, which is slowly sort of disintegrating. The idea of the genius, the Freud, the Marx, the Leonardo, the Einstein, that come up with an idea that is completely related to the man that came up with it. Whereas today, ideas just get thrown out there and used, and it's that use that in a way is the art, rather than the person who comes up with the idea.
Probably see more and more non-linear interactive experiences. And Lev Manovich says that the 21st century will be defined by the database. And I think there's some truth to that. But maybe even going beyond the database into the interface, because I think that's really the intersection between kind of all the rich data and rich stories that we're wrapping our heads around and the ability to say something about them.
Every single experimental film is about time, because film only captures time and space. I think we will in some strange way, enter into new types of film, probably starting with an idea of three-dimensional and probably somehow interactive at the same time. It's not something that particularly interests me. I like certain limitations. I think already film has almost not enough limitations to be able to focus. And so I wouldn't be one to jump in and start making 3D interactive. But I'm sure that people will start to do that, and you'll start dealing with spaces that are deeper. I don't just mean 3D like James Cameron or whatever. I mean 3 more dimensions where when you move through the space, something else is changing and you're getting a greater understanding. And I think the visual capacity of people to think is tremendous. It's really huge, but it has to be trained a bit. But I'm always impressed at how quickly either children or adults can pick up on visual analogy and then move through, more or less through spaces that are abstract. And when they become more dynamic, I think that that'll be kind of the front edge of art, because it'll be the front edge of expanding how we understand reality and how we can process information.
Yeah, the funny thing about video mapping, I think, is that it's getting part of the environment, so there's no border between you and the content and the light. So you think about it more naturally. And everything that happens, you adapt it like it's real. You don't make the shift between the virtual layer and the real layer anymore. Where is art going? I think it will be more part of our natural environment. And we don't see it as an add to anymore. So we react on it more naturally.
If these shifts were simply documented in a holographic medium through mono-channeled POV, directionality similar to contemporary cinematic 3D technology, the shifts would indeed resemble traditional theatre, complete with the fourth wall that maintains the tradition of theatrical realism via an audience/performer division. If the holographic medium instead attempted to break this fourth wall, such as augmented reality integrated with artificial intelligence is progressing towards, the shifts could become an integral part of future genre creation and knowledge formation/codification.
I think mostly we're just seeing what happens when you reach a point where computational resources are no longer the most significant factor in thinking. We're really able to, basically waste cycles and memory and transfer speeds. It lends itself to a completely different type of creative process where you can really kind of explore and experiment a lot more freely than one could before. We don't have to necessarily know where we're going with a piece of software when we start writing it. We can actually explore and iterate and potentially even throw away something that would have taken days or weeks to make without feeling any sense of investment. Just start anew. That's really powerful, I think. Perhaps most significantly, it lets us create our own limitations. And I think those generally can be a lot more meaningful than the ones that are arbitrarily put on by the media.
If you have an artwork, for example, that basically just creates a set of data which could be interpreted many different ways. Like you could take the data and you could make it into a photograph that would be three-dimensional or have a relief, or instead of making lots of photographs, it would be a film or whatever. That means that the only original thing is that set of data. So where is the artwork? Is the artwork the data, or is the artwork the output?
There's something really magic and beautiful about being able to take something that was created for one purpose and then put it towards your art practice and make something really new and beautiful and meaningful with that. On the other hand, I'm not necessarily excited by a technology that comes out just because it's new or just because it's available all of a sudden. There has to be a reason underlying why it's being used to in some way support or enhance the meaning or the beauty of what you're making.
I identified myself as a painter. I was pushing away ideas and concepts and things that I wanted to work with because I didn't feel that I could really paint them. The best way to approach a project or a problem is to use the best tool for the job. And sometimes it is painting, and sometimes that's programming. Oftentimes, like when I have picked up new technologies and incorporated them to my work, it hasn't been because I saw the technology and I thought, okay, I want to do something with this. It's because there was another project that sort of called for a technological solution. Every once in a while, you see something and think, oh, that's cool. I want to do something with it. For myself, when I've approached things that way, it's really difficult to make the work not about the technology.
People get sidetracked so easily and fall into this, like, what can the computer do versus how is it a tool helping me? The simpler works are finally the more precise works and have clear thought, and I think that'll continue and be even more poignant when we get noisier and noisier.
For example, a concept which has been explored by Transmediale and many other festivals was surveillance. And then I would go to the Biennale of Lyon, which is a traditional Biennale of contemporary art, and I would see a very simple artwork without any technology, and they would investigate surveillance and comment on it without any technology, and it would be stronger.
Performance art is making a big comeback now. It's getting a newfound footing, especially in the major institutions. And it seems to me that that's a reaction against the computer space and the technology. So we have this extreme high tech, and then it's balanced out by this complete appreciation now where it's only a person on a stage with no props and no help, and it's the human doing something.
I'm really interested in going back to objects and things that are tangible, and also on the other side of that, experiences that are maybe intangible but that you have with other people around you and their physical presence and all the messiness that that entails. In a lot of ways, I feel like I have this sort of split practice where on the one hand there's the internet work because it's cheap, ubiquitous, it's available to me, I can put stuff up there, does not take a lot of time, and you've got potentially this unknown audience that you have no idea who they are, and can get very, very interesting things happening when you relate with people. But then on the other hand, I have this live practice, sometimes more theatrical, sometimes more relational, where it's about actually staring someone in the face or being in the same room with them and imposing your physical presence on them.
Our specific desire is to basically to create social link, and the results are only a pretext to that. You know, the films, the music, the albums, and the pieces on the walls. Basically, we're in a world where so many people create. We hear people talking about the decay of a creative industry, you know, how music industry can survive, shit like that. This is not the point. I think the point is what's really exciting nowadays is how do people create, and how that way that they create changes really something in this world.
I was kind of taken by this Bruce Nauman quote that, like, anything I do in the studio, I'm an artist, I'm in my artist studio, if I do it here, it's art. And I thought, like, well, that seems really freeing and great, but then he actually limited it to his studio. He can only feel secure in his studio. And I thought, well, I'm going to try to shoot stuff out of the studio. I was always shooting in the studio. Now I want to do it in front of an art audience, call the whole process art, and not do it in my studio and see if there's any barrier. And of course there's no barrier. Anywhere you go and anything you do, you can call it art if you want to, if you're an artist. If you're brave enough to call yourself an artist, then you can say, this is my art. And of course people can laugh at it, but it is art.
There is no obvious relation between the quality of a piece of work, for example, and the value. The market is very much disconnected from the actual object or the content. Artists got fascinated with exactly that fact 100 years ago. When Duchamp introduced the ready-made, that was exactly his point. You can put anything in there and then it will eventually become a commodity in that market.
We are beginning to see new ways of funding happening and of dissemination and artists participating more directly in their own market and not necessarily being cloistered off in their studios where you have the dealer acting as the sole middleman between the artist and the rest of the world.
I was in New York with my friend Yancy, who was one of the guys behind Kickstarter, and he mentioned something really, really interesting. He was like, oh yeah, you know, the way you live your life, you could probably like live your life by having 2 or 3 Kickstarter projects a year, and that's it, you know? And it's kind of true. I'm totally into this way of doing things, of crowdfunding, which is not a very, very nice word, but I really believe in it so much. I just like really think about from different positions in the world, and this is really, really amazing, this Kickstarter thing, to a lot of cultures. And I think we're going to see like really fantastic things coming, especially in the next 5 years. The world's going to be spread out all around the world.
has been a long tradition of the national artist. There are a number of names that you all know. Nations are really proud about that they are British or Indian or US artists. I'm a nomad myself. For us, being in a tribe that moves around is not a problem at all because we don't care about places at all. No matter if you are in Toronto, Berlin or Amsterdam, what matters for us is which kind of value do you embrace for your work. This doesn't matter whether you're based in Asia, Europe or in Americas. Certain values are all over the planet and you find them anywhere, and it doesn't matter if you're nomadic or a resident of a city.
We've been seeing a rising of nomad artists in the past 10 years, a lot. And basically it sort of corresponds to a real need in our society of movement, of bodies in motion, to go from one place to another by basically taking the pretext of making films or music to move around, to travel. It's a very interesting idea of modern nomadism. And I guess, I don't know, that's what I'm doing, and it's quite fantastic. I think a lot of people are doing this nowadays, and more, and it's not going to stop, that's for sure. There's a real tendency towards that in our generation. And the internet and all those digital tools, those small cameras are an incredible way to do this now.
What I appreciate in my life is no matter where I go, there are at least 7 to 10 people that I really know profoundly well. I can trust them, they trust me, and it goes far beyond a Facebook relationship. And I think that's really crucially important. You need to trust people, they need to know you. They need to be here for you in good and bad times, and not just only when you are in the show mode, when you present and you are the cool artist. I couldn't imagine being an artist without that.
For these types of creatives, identity becomes a series of fragmented reality sets that need to be constantly channeled, monitored and updated. This fragmentation does alter how we process the world via associated emotional and psychological effects. These identities, established through the use of avatars or profile creation, alter according to the foibles of specific platforms and interfaces. A subject may have a multitude of profiles created across a wide distribution base. These staggered profiles create a type of socio-phrenic functioning that eclipses solo persona extensions. Users may reference a fellow synthetic by their character or avatar name, even when interacting in phenomenologically defined reality. According to traditional psychological theory, these type of identity ecologies would represent a subtle splintering of a primary identity, akin to schizophrenia. The base categories denoting emotion and psychological states need overhauling in line with contemporary/synthetic conceptions.
I was kind of working with a lot of different voices in my head and different little people on my shoulder. I had an opportunity to do a program at Yale University, and while I was there, I painted this big, very somber black painting. And as a way to sort of break myself of that cycle and kind of push myself into a completely new direction, I painted a tiny little turtle down in the corner of this very somber black on black painting. And that single little defacement allowed a whole new part of me into the work. I went from thinking of art as a strictly serious thing, and if you're going to make serious art, it has to be serious, but that you can make serious art and have a very large amount of humor in it, and sometimes that's the best way, because you can use humor as a tool to attach things in people's brains and to kind of sneak ideas in the back door and allow concepts and ideas and things to move into the viewer's consciousness without them necessarily knowing it.
One way that artists can strengthen their ability to make these unusual connections is through the power of the subconscious mind that we normally experience as dreaming.
I would be very curious to get to a level of experience that would be dreamlike, where you could be walking through a space in someone else's dream and have more of a sense, because it's very hard for me to know if I dream similar to the way you dream, or even to remember my dream so precisely, that I think would be quite interesting if somebody could make a piece that's as real as a dream, and you can actually make choices maybe, but you're not in control and things like that. And I think in a way that must be the future of where art is about, I have an experience and I'm trying to share it with other people, and I'm limited if I'm painting on a canvas and it's square and it's this big.
For all you cared, you could draw the universe. You could draw little Martians running all over the place. You could draw things you imagined. You could draw real life scenes. You could draw what you think about. You could draw dreams. You could draw people, in fact. Lots of people say they can't draw people, but when you put your mind to it, you can really draw anything. You know, maybe decorate the street, because the street's a very nice thing, but it's not the greatest to look at, you know. But what I might do is leave the arrows and all the little dots and slashes and lines. But everywhere there wasn't that, you could make the most beautiful designs. You could, I'd make it a law that your car would have to have wet paint on it every day on its tires. And when you rode around, it would make any colored track all over the road, but it couldn't be on the line. And that would make, I guess, the world a better place.